Beautiful day. Spring is here. Yes. Wonderful, wonderful day. Wind through the trees. Good day to just go out and take a walk in the beautiful spring weather. This entire episode, I will have my feet in a nice Epsom salt bath. It's going to be nice.
Must be nice. I don't have any such thing.
Well, you know, up here, springtime is not really springtime. I kind of like it, though. It's still, except for it's a bit bright right now. My headache is, every day I wake up and I get a headache by the end of the day because all the light, since it's springtime, the sun is, I don't know, doing something crazy, and it's bouncing off the ice, and it's hitting my shimmying monitor and creating reflections, and I'm getting dizzy from like headaches every single day. So it's about time to move everything downstairs into a cave and live that way. You've already got a cave there, I can see. Well, what is that? Is that a Macintosh on the desk?
Yes. It is the 30th anniversary edition Mac. The Mac Super SE, and it does the thing, you know, it's crazy.
Yeah, we got to make a video about this. That's a Hackintosh, all right. Okay, let's get down to business here. Thief is $29. I actually picked up Thief. Everyone has been begging me to pick up Thief, and people have been saying that our last benchmark video was a sham because I didn't have a copy of Thief. Well, now I have Thief. I still don't have Battlefield 4, so I've only got one Mantle game, but I'm going to do some Mantle benchmarks for everybody. But anyway, Thief is on sale. Just go to texindica.com/game deals. Check that out. We've also got a new store coming very soon. Should I tell them about the new store yet, Wendell, or do you think I should wait a little bit for that?
We have a new store coming, and it's going to have keycaps and products, but the logistics is still being finalized.
Yeah, I told the guys at District Lines today to stop taking orders, so if you're ready to order something, just wait a few days. Our new store will be up, and we'll have some new items, and the shipping will be way faster. So I do want to apologize to everyone who had to wait like 7 years to get their stuff. We are going to take control of it. If you want something done right, Wendell, you got to freaking do it yourself.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, but that's the way it goes. All right, this thing. Okay, this is actually kind of funny. Google Earth was used to discover a woman who's been trapped on a deserted island for 7 years. So this kid, right, in I believe it was Minnesota or Missouri, I forget where it was. I think it's Minnesota. We're just going to say Minnesota. Yep, a kid in Minnesota just playing around on Google Earth, looks, and he's like, hey, in the middle of nowhere here, is that an SOS somewhere near the Panama Canal area? There's an island here. There's an SOS symbol on the island. And sure enough, there was a lady on the island. She'd been there for 7 years. I mean, this is like
Gilligan's Island, but only Mary Ann was on the island, apparently.
Yeah, really lonely. I read the article because I'm really into survival stuff. I think it's interesting. And Pistol is way into survival stuff, like more than anybody out there. I want a video game of this. That would be kind of fun. But they've already made the movie, whatever it was, with Tom Hanks. So it would be like the female version of that movie. I would like to see it because it's real. I would love to see a movie about this. 7 years on a freaking island. Ridiculous. Anyway, so that's just one interesting use for Google Earth. They've also discovered Jurassic Park somewhere in Africa with Google Earth. I'm pretty sure, Wendell. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, I don't think I believe that.
But sometimes, don't you want to believe?
That's Google's genetic engineering playground.
Yeah, we found it. They forgot to remove that part. All right, we're going to talk about Snowden for just a minute. Snowden was on TED, and you guys can watch the 30-minute long video. It's pretty interesting, and he's actually more well-spoken than I thought. In fact, Wendell, he's so well-spoken that he could be a hired plant. He's an actor. I was talking to Agent Beard, right? And Agent Beard has a theory, and we'll do like an actual sit-down talk about this, but I wanted to bring it up just for a second. What if he was a plant? I don't know. You got any comments on this?
I don't think I mean, if he was a plant, then he was a plant set up to get rid of Clapper and some of the other folks. He wasn't a plant. He was just extremely well-spoken because, I mean, he's a really intelligent guy, and he's looked at all the people that came before him, and so he's always tried to move very calmly and very, very collected. And I mean, were I in his position, I don't know that I could be as stoic as he is, because he's clearly got emotion underneath, but everything that he says is very calm, very collected, and so that is unusual because most of the time when people are in his position, the emotions get the better of them and they have a react. It's really easy to let your emotions sort of take over. And I've never really seen him in that scenario. So it's either that he's very good and very calm and collected, or he's thought it through to the point that he's like, come what may, I'm not afraid of death anymore, so what does it really matter?
You know, when I was talking to Agent Beard, he kind of brought up this. You know, here, this is another article here from on Ars Technica. So the TED, they brought Snowden on, and then they brought the NSA on and allowed the NSA, Richard Ledgett, they brought him on from the NSA. He's the deputy director, and they let him, you know, talk. They basically said, hey, listen, it's your turn. We gave Snowden a turn. Now it's your turn. And I think it's really cool that they did that. But the main thing that he's talking about in this is that he's saying that Snowden is a traitor because Snowden was putting lives at risk, and some of the stuff that Snowden was leaking or is leaking is giving away our secrets to other foreign, I don't know, giving it away to our enemies essentially, and it's putting us at risk. So up until this point, I don't think that Snowden's actually given away anything. At least nothing really in the leaks has given away much of, I don't know, too much of our strategy or too much of our foreign surveillance strategy. It seems like mostly it's raising an alarm for, hey, these guys are looking at your email and listening to your whatever, your phone calls and your text messages and that sort of thing. However, one of the things that Agent Beard said, and maybe we can just chat about this for a second, and maybe we can have like a totally separate chat, because that's what he was saying we should do. We should all get together, all three of us, and just make a video about it. But maybe we can, maybe we won't. We'll just talk about that. But well, what do we not know? He's staying in Russia right now. What if Putin was like, listen, you can chill here, but we got to look at all the files? I mean, maybe we don't know about this yet. Do you think that that's hypothetically something that could be going on behind the scenes and we don't know about it? No,
I think because Snowden's been one step ahead at every turn, I think that he'd handed off the files to Greenwald. And I think I legitimately think that Greenwald is probably the only person that has a copy anymore. It might be the case that there's a copy on a hard drive buried somewhere between Hawaii and Russia that he could maybe go get. But probably for his own safety and for, you know, to make sure that someone in the intelligence community can't like create a situation that would make it real bad for him, then maybe, just maybe. But on the whole, I think that it's probably the case that he doesn't even have the files anymore. It's probably in the hands of the journalists or some trusted third party that we don't even know about.
Well, that's the thing. The bottom line is we really don't know about any of it. So it might be interesting to chew on that for a little while. I'd be kind of curious to know what you guys think of this as well. But back to the internet, this whole surveillance business has really created a lot of problems for the United States. And there's a watchdog group called Reporters Without Borders, and they have just published an update. Every year they publish Enemies of the Internet. It's an ominous sounding list because it's an ominous freaking list. And they just list, you know, mostly countries like China and Iran and countries that censor the internet, or just countries that get in the way of a free, open internet. And this year, guess who's on the list, Wendell? Take one wild guess who's on the list.
The USA finally made the list.
Yeah, we finally on the list. Did we get like a prize or something? Well, maybe a lot of our money can go overseas now.
The Obama administration keeps denying those freedom of information requests, and we keep threatening people with jail time and, you know, blah 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 blah. So this administration is shaping up to be one of the least transparent in a while, which is funny because transparency was actually one of the platforms, one of the things they ran on the campaign election platform. So, whoops.
Yeah. Very true. One thing that's interesting in this report here is they say that, listen, the USA as a whole is still good, and they list out the things that they have problems with. They also listed GCHQ over in the UK, and they listed, just a few other intelligence agencies in different countries as being the problem. And the NSA here is the problem, and the CIA is also the problem in some areas, but they mainly were focused on the CIA, but they're saying that is, it's now an enemy of the internet.
The most disturbing thing that I took away from all that, if you dig into it and you look at all the articles and the stuff that's come out from Greenwald and the stuff alluded to in the TED Talk, is that the NSA, at least for one country that the Washington Post knows about now, for one country, the NSA records all of the phone calls in the entire country. All of them. Not the metadata, the phone calls. Time, duration, the content of the call is recorded for the entire country. So clearly they have the capability. And didn't we a long time ago say, no, we just collect metadata? It's always only metadata, even, in other countries. But here we have a Washington Post leak that says, oh no, we actually record everything in a particular country that shall remain unnamed.
I bet I can take a few guesses of which country that may be.
Yeah, I think we all can.
All right, let's talk about Comcast for just a minute. We're going to talk about Comcast and the ISP situation because, like I said, it has ripples that affect the rest of the world. This is going to be quick, and then we're going to have a lot of fun for the rest of the episode. So we're getting all the heavy stuff out of the way right in the beginning, so we can like kick back and have a Mecha Hopzilla and just have a little bit of fun here. So, Al Franken, right here he is, and he is urging the Department of Justice and the FCC to please don't let Comcast manipulate internet traffic. And it's a very interesting letter here that he's written to the Department of Justice. There's several different quotes in here, but Al Franken is someone who's standing up for this, or standing up for us, and that's kind of cool to see. He said he's very concerned that Comcast could use its clout in the broadband market to dictate the content consumers receive and the prices they pay. Now, they're doing a lot more than just that. They're not only dictating things, they're also, what was it? How did you put this window? They're running around with their hands out right now. There's a problem.
They're running around with their hands out because it's like, oh, we've got them, we've got this thing. We've been able to manipulate the situation, and we can get other people to upgrade our infrastructure without actually doing anything. This is a standard pattern. AT&T is doing it on their side. They're going to their investors and saying, no, it's AT&T. The AT&T CEO came out and said, we're not going to spend much from our capital account on broadband infrastructure to the investors. Meanwhile, they also released press releases saying, yeah, we're going to roll out real high speed in all these places Google's competing with. One of these things is not like the other. And so you have Comcast and Verizon now who are basically with their hand out saying, all right, Netflix is willing to play ball. Let's get some more money. And then Level 3 comes out of the woodwork. Level 3 is like the big, amazing, white knight, top shelf, tier 1 provider that's been there since the beginning. And they were like, well, we've got a confession. We had a deal with these ISPs as well to help them a little bit because we felt sorry for them because they were like, we've got a big giant network. We don't know what to do. And so Level 3 is like, we made a deal to help them. And now we figure we may have turned them into a monster.
Yeah, it's really interesting. This article that you're mentioning is from Michael Mooney, and he's the legal counsel, one of the legal counsel from Tier 3. And like you just said, Tier 3
Level
is...
3.
Level 3, I'm the Tier 3. Level 3, like you said, they're like, if you really want a better comparison, they're kind of like Cogent, but they're like Cogent without all the weirdness. They're like the very
Cogent has a colorful history. Level 3 is pretty much impeachable.
Yeah. So anyway, he came out, and this article here is very similar to the video that we made. So I'm sure a lot of you guys saw the video, and the video has been circulating around the internet. And I think, I really do think he might have read the video. He's using some of your terminology there, Wendell. He said they're playing a game of chicken. The ISPs are playing a game of chicken.
They are playing a game of chicken. Chicken conveys exactly the thing that's going on here. It's an immature, childish, terrible game that results in somebody having to go to the hospital or at least getting a Band-Aid.
Yeah. Well, it looks like what am I saying here? Level 3, Tier 3. I keep calling Level 3, Tier 3, Tier 3, Level 3, whatever. So it looks like they had some sort of a secret deal that's similar to the Netflix deal. And they thought that it was just like a one-time thing. They didn't realize that Comcast was going to run around and Netflix, not Netflix, Verizon was going to run around and just start demanding money from everyone who uses their bandwidth. It's like, no, wait a minute. Hold on a second. You guys have tons of money that you should have been up. I don't understand. So it's interesting to see. And we've already talked about this a lot before, so I'm not going to really get too crazy about it. But it's interesting to see this company pretty much echoing exactly what we are saying.
Yes, and it's Level 3, so politicians and folks should pay attention. And they actually went so far as to complain to the FCC, which is the key thing to take away from this small blog post. Now, in the blog post, they don't really talk about how they helped some of the ISPs in the past. You have to Google to find that. But Level 3, it's sort of like you guys are a big customer of ours. We can scratch your back a little bit and try to help you with this, was sort of the context of these deals. And in the sort of backroom negotiations with Netflix, I'm sure that it was presented as, Level 3 is working with us on this. Why don't you work with us on this, Netflix? And so Netflix is like, well, I guess we don't have a choice. At least the deals with Netflix are short-lived. So maybe by the time these deals come up, these contracts expire, things will work it out. But the ISPs in America having this much clout is insanely dangerous. And Consumer Reports has came out vehemently against the Time Warner Comcast merger expressly for this reason. Not because it's not anti-competitive. I mean, they've done a really good job doing an end run around capitalism to not compete with one another. So merging is not going to increase or decrease competition because they've already worked that out among themselves.
It's like they planned it.
But it will result in a larger organization with more political clout. I mean, how much sense does it make for a public utility to amass so much wealth and money that they can buy another public utility? Clearly, they're not reinvesting the profits in infrastructure. Otherwise, they'd never be able to afford to do that.
You know, I want some anime, maybe a GIF of this, or maybe you guys can make a JPEG or something. That I want to see some of these. I want to see these ISPs in their true light. They strike me as like the type of people who, like, you know, they go to work every day in their Ferrari, they park behind like a bunch of bushes, and then they go stand in the middle of the road with an eye patch and a tin cup, and they're like, please give me $1, please. And then at the end of the day, they take all their money and they get in their Ferrari and drive home. So I want to see like some of that with Comcast or Verizon. That'd be kind of funny. that would amuse me.
For reference needed on that, you guys need to look up Lewis Black's comedy skit on the Adelphia executives, because those were cable executives, and it's like, oh, they spent $30,000 on an elephant foot umbrella stand and just crazy stuff like that, because I'm a cable executive, I gotta buy stuff.
You know, I lived in Florida, and I had Adelphia. It's like wherever, now I've got Comcast. It's like whenever there's trouble, I move, and I'm like, oh, guess who I've got for my ISP? So yeah, I had Adelphia back in the time, and they were not very much fun to deal with at all.
Clearly, they have too much clout if they're confusing their own internal network with the internet. And it's like, they've got a 63 IQ, and it's like, no, Comcast, your network is not the internet. Internet, no, Comcast, the internet is different than your network.
Let's have a little bit of fun with something else we like to talk about, and that's copyright. Right now, Warner Brothers is in a fight with the EFF because the EFF wants to see the results from a case against Warner Brothers and a website called, I believe it's called Hotfile. So what happens, Hotfile had some stuff, and they used the DMCA, and they said, hey, get all that stuff off the internet. We don't want all our files on the internet. This is illegal, and we don't want it. And then that all went to court in Florida, and things happened, and the EFF wants to see the results of that, and freaking Warner Brothers is fighting back like crazy because they're saying if they review the results of this, it's going to essentially tell everybody exactly how they can avoid like all of the copyright claims and become completely anonymous. And I'm just reading this thinking, like, all this is going to say is probably like use a VPN or use some anonymizer tools or something like that. It seems pretty damn basic. Are people so stupid they don't even know what you can do to get around having to deal with nonsense like this? I'm not endorsing illegal file sharing or anything like that, but I'm just saying this stuff is completely common and known, and you can go on the internet and just do a search for, hey, how do I anonymize my traffic on the internet, and probably find out exactly all the redacted lines here from the from the filings. I don't know. I think it's kind of funny that they're fighting so hard, and they're saying that the EFF really, really wants access to this so that they can use the results of this against, Warner Brothers, because the EFF is always fighting Warner Brothers because a lot of times the DMCA takedown notices are ridiculous, or they're misguided, or possibly just for things that shouldn't have a DMCA takedown notice. So the EFF fights Warner Brothers a lot. So Warner Brothers is like, no, they're just going to take all that stuff and use it to fight us. I think it's hilarious. It's a ridiculous sitcom. Actually, it's not even a sitcom. It's more of a soap opera, but a bad one, like a really, really bad one.
A really terrible soap opera where everyone is sociopathic and just wants to steal everything and blah blah blah. I had a slightly different take on this, and I thought it was that they don't want the details of how they figure this out to be known more than the details of how they do it.
That may be true.
The method is probably shoddy.
I'm reading through this. That's probably why. I didn't see it in plain black and white English here, but that's probably exactly why. Their methods of, yeah.
I mean, with the whole Prenda fiasco, you can go read about the Prenda fiasco if you don't know what that is at popehat.com. But basically with Prenda, they're copyright trolls. They were suing people, but they themselves are the ones that uploaded the stuff that they were suing for. And it took a long time for that to come out, and it took a lot of experts looking into it. Heck, the Pirate Bay had to even post logs from their systems, which is not ever supposed to happen. I mean, that's sort of a black swan. It's the unexpected, but then the schadenfreude of oh, look, we got caught with our pants down, and they were the copyright trolls seeding the things that they were saying had been copyright violated. Was sort of, so they got the hand. I don't think that firm exists anymore.
So you're telling me you think that Warner Brothers may be throwing a lure out there and then reeling people in and getting them in trouble? So they're probably the ones seeding the content, and then they watch those files. That's probably exactly what's happening.
Isn't Warner Brothers the studio that did the Veronica Mars Kickstarter thing, where they had a Kickstarter for like the Veronica Mars movie, and if it was like, we get the production budget, we'll do it. But then it was like, if we get some figure that's so crazy far beyond the production budget, we'll have a DRM-free downloadable movie for everybody that pledges so much. And they actually got the goal. And then the movie studio was like, no, we can't. DRM-free? No, we don't. No. We're not going to do that. No.
I don't even know what Veronica Mars is. Did we talk about it on the show? Because I feel like an idiot if we talked about it and I don't know what it is.
I don't know what it is either. It's the title of something that the rights of which belong to one of these large studios, and there was a Kickstarter campaign that the studio agreed to do. I mean, the studio was in on the Kickstarter, and the production's happening and all that. Everything's fine with that. But one of the tiers in Kickstarter was, if this is funded, there'll be a DRM-free download because, we're starting to get the internet. We're going to put our toe in. And when it happened, it was like, no, kill it with fire. And they're so crazy about it that they're refunding people that, like, if you paid for that tier, I think it was like $45, they will give you a $45 refund if you complain about it, because they're only offering like a DRM download or an iTunes DRM download or something really or a Blu-ray disc or something is the only thing that they're offering. They're not offering a DRM free download. And it's like, you read about the other things on the internet where it's like, well, old media is just not sure about the internet, that they're not sure that people will pay. And it's like, here's a case where people have already given them their money. All they have to do is deliver, and they're not willing to deliver. That is the level of old person that we're dealing with on this.
We've been talking about insanity this whole episode so far. Let's talk about sanity for a while. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do that.
The Netherlands paves the way for carrier-free SIM cards. So the government in the Netherlands actually said, you know what? SIM cards, no longer can they be locked to one service. You can now buy a phone, and the phone will come with a SIM card, and then you can basically activate that SIM card with whatever service you like. A free and open world for cell phones. That's crazy. So they're right now the only country in the world that's doing anything like this. I would kind of like, maybe I kind of want to move there now. Do they have mountains in the Netherlands? Not really. No, it's mostly flat, right?
As you were saying that, the picture in my head I got was, imagine this is 1979 or 1980, and we're talking about, it's like, wow, man, that country lets you plug in non-AT&T telephones to the telephone network. Can you imagine that? You don't have to rent your phone from AT&T? That's crazy. And here we are. 30 years later, and we've got cell phones, and it's like, we've really got to rent the cell phone from the carrier. We can't just buy the cell phone on the open market or have a SIM that's not linked to a particular vendor and all this crazy stuff. So, in 5 or 10 years, people are going to look back and be like, oh, that was a racket too.
Yeah, but right now it's like, oh, it's the only way to do it, so we got to do it. Speaking of cell phones, in South Korea, the schools have been forcing all the students to install this thing called iSmart Keeper, and it allows the teachers in each of the classrooms to disable the phones when the kids come in there. Now, the kids, they're obviously doing things like rooting, because whenever they install things like this, there's always some jackass that's smarter that has like, oh, I'm just going to root my phone, or I'm just going to create an application, or I'm going to write a little bit of code to make it not work. So I'm not sure if this is a very good solution at all, but has the problem grown to the point of, requiring this sort of thing? Are kids just sitting there in schools on their phones the entire time instead of learning? I mean, is that even a scary thing? I don't know what to make of this, because when I went to school, we didn't really have cell phones, and now I just hear stories. A friend of mine's a teacher, actually my aunt's a teacher, and she said she can barely teach class because all the kids are on Facebook, and she tells them to put away their phones, and she takes away their phones. She's also in a wealthier area, so whenever she takes their phone away, 2 days later they come to school with a brand new phone. It's like, this is an iPhone 5S. Thanks for giving me an upgrade, teach. So I mean,
I don't. Yeah, we didn't have cell phones in school, but when people would bring in toys and stuff, and there was a wall that had a hook for everybody's backpack, and so you had to put your stuff in the backpack. I don't know why we can't do that with phones.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, is it really the point where we need an application to do that? Why can't you just say, hey, you're in my classroom, turn off your damn phone or leave?
Or put
That's it.
in your backpack where there's no temptation to Facebook in the middle of class.
Is it that hard? If you're a teacher, I want to know how it goes in your class. Are people really having issues like this around the world, where it's just like kids can't do anything because they're too busy smashing buttons and banging their head against Reddit and 4chan? I don't know. Maybe that's just the way of the world.
Well, that certainly explains society.
Oh, this is fun. Facebook. So we've talked about facial recognition a lot. Now this new, this is the creepiest name ever. Facebook has some new facial recognition technology called, let me just get close to the mic, DeepFace. Facebook DeepFace. One of the interesting things here is that it actually takes a model of the face and creates it makes a model of your face, and then it creates a 3D model so that it can determine if the face is you from just about any angle. And I know there's some governmental software that can already do this sort of thing, but now Facebook is using this for very innocent things like tagging you in photos. Even if you don't tag yourself or want yourself tagged, now they can tag you in your friends' photos or tag you in photos of places you shouldn't have been, and that'll show up on your feed. But there are several different implications for possible uses here. I guess some of them are going to be marketing, but it's just creepy, that's all. It's just kind of creepy. I can't think of anything else to say about it.
I can't think of anything else Facebook would do that would be more creepy, short of turning on the camera and microphone all the time and sort of mining that for data.
Well, speaking of creepy, there's a new app out there that allows you to cloak yourself from your friends. And guess how it does it? It does it by using location data from social apps like Facebook and Twitter and Foursquare and all Instagram, all that crap, because everyone is just all the time accessing their stuff. And your phone has access to your data as far as like where your location data. So this application just allows you to essentially you flag people as friends and enemies, and then it'll say like, hey, over at this coffee shop is your enemy. Someone else who's writing a screenplay, and you don't want to be anywhere near them because you want to have your own coffee shop to yourself where you can sit there with your square glasses and write your own damn screenplay and be the center of attention. So if Bernard is over at 46th Street at the Pig and Barrel, that sounds like something from Daggerfall, but yeah, the Pig and Barrel having a coffee or a beer writing a screenplay, to go somewhere else.
I've got a better solution. Delete your social apps. Not necessarily your accounts. You can still log in once in a while, but your social apps don't have any business on your phone. If you're bored, you could log into the website and do whatever you need to do. But honestly, just delete the apps.
Well, the interesting thing with this application and what it really does is it monitors everyone else. So it tells you where everybody else is, like on the map. So you can keep tabs on like where people you like and where people you hate are. And it allows you to cloak yourself. But yeah, deleting your apps would be a good way to cloak yourself. But what about like, still random encounters that you don't want to have? This could possibly keep you away from things and like help you to reroute your life around people you don't want to see.
So yeah, I just don't. It's still too intrusive. It's a distraction. Like if I run into somebody completely serendipitously, I would wager that was probably unavoidable anyway. If I'm so obsessed with avoiding social encounter that I've got my nose plugged into the phone to look for warnings of avoiding whatever, I really don't see that as any different than having my nose plugged into the phone to see what everybody else is up to.
I guess I'm the same way. It never really bothered me bumping into people I didn't like in public because I would just, I don't know if it's kind of a mean thing or whatever. I would just be like, man, I don't like small talk. I'll see you, and just leave. It was kind of weird, but it was honest. And I wonder how the world would be if instead of trying to avoid everybody like this, or instead of just trying to ignore people on your phone, what if you just picked up your phone and was like, hey, man, I don't want to talk right now. Bye. And then hang up. At least they would know. I don't know. Would it make the world better? Would an honest world be a better world? Now we're getting weird.
Well, I can tell you. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like I'm not a people person, but that doesn't mean, I don't have to go through. I can just ignore the thing and not like things. I mean, this is not. It doesn't require active participation to be antisocial. Antisocial, by definition, is just really focusing on something that's not necessarily social, not actively avoiding things that are social. I think there's a difference, and I'm definitely not a people person.
Let's chew on the aftermath of Newsweek's Bitcoin scoop, as Ars Technica called it.
That was the thing that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Leah McGrath Goodman. She's like, I found Satoshi Nakamoto right there. Is that his name? I always say Natoshi Sakamoto. And
it's because you're illiterate.
It's because I grew up in Eastern. Wait a minute, you grew up there too. Hold on a second.
Hush now.
So Dorian Nakamoto, right? The poor guy that has been like, they've been chasing him around anyway. I just think it's interesting now. They've. The only reason I'm bringing this up is that they sat down with Goodman and they sat down with Newsweek, and they've been different news outlets have been interviewing them, and their justification for this, their bold justification, is basically just trust us. We were there. It's a hunch. We know it's probably true. I don't know. Do you think this guy has like grounds to sue Newsweek?
Yep.
Think he should? I think he should.
Yep.
I think he's going to. I mean, he's had his lawyer do a lot of talking for him.
Yep.
I think there's a really fun lawsuit coming, and I just cannot wait to see that. If you guys missed the entire thing, Dorian Nakamoto is a guy, and he did some government contracts, and this Leah McGrath Goodman decided that he just, based upon the fact that he's Asian and does math, she basically fit the paradigm that she was looking for, and she went to his house and harassed him and all this sort of thing and asked him if he created Bitcoin. And his response at the time when she approached him on the driveway, and this is what she's been using a lot as justification, was his response was like, I don't have anything to do with that anymore. I don't have anything to do with it. I'm working on my own things. Leave me alone. And she was like, you don't have anything to do with it. And in response to that, he was like, listen, she put me on the spot in my driveway. I said I didn't have anything to do with it because I used to do a lot of government contracts, and I'm not allowed to talk about any of my government contracts. So whatever she was asking, I just told her I don't have anything to do with it. It sounds pretty legit. And there's even a video here of him where he's talking to the Associated Press. And you guys can watch this, see if it convinces you or not. He seems of sound mind. He seems like a really cool guy. I don't know. He's doing a hell of an acting job if he really is the person who created Bitcoin. So I don't know.
Yeah, and if he is not the person who created Bitcoin and he is a government contractor, then this probably puts in danger his ability to get additional contracts from the government, just because it's like, we're nervous now. This thing happened, and you have a lot of attention drawn to you, and that just makes us nervous. So maybe we can get somebody else to work on our stuff. It sounds like he's retired, but if he's not,
pretty much retired, yeah.
And if he's doing anything on the side or any consulting or anything, that would be bad.
I just figured it out. Wendell, get your tinfoil hat out. Here's what really happened. The government hired him about 8 or 9 years ago, or whenever Bitcoin, 2002 Bitcoin came out, or 2001? I don't know. The government hired him to create Bitcoin so that then they could monitor the entire thing, and they're eventually going to crack down on it, and we're all going to be in big trouble. And then this Leah McGrath Goodman is a genius, and she's onto it. That's what's really going on right now.
Yeah.
No.
I got some swampland I need to sell you.
What's the view like?
Mosquitoes everywhere.
Bill Gates, he wants to give all of his money. He wants to give it away to the charitable organizations, and he wants to do good things with it. And there's an interesting article here on the Huffington Post. He told them that the most fulfilling thing out of all of the different things he's done, he's created Microsoft, he's done a gazillion different philanthropic things. He said the most, the most fulfilling thing that he has ever done is he started going around to other rich billionaires, and he's asked them, hey, listen, when you die, will you leave your money to something good? And so far, he's got like a couple hundred signatures, 120-something signatures, including like Zuckerberg, Priscilla Chen, Richard Branson. He's got a lot of people signed on. So yeah, it is pretty interesting that all these rich guys are, contributing to a better world, is what they say. But there's another way to contribute to a better world. And here we have, I've got the wrong thing on the screen. And here we have Larry Page. Of course, he's the CEO of Google. And Larry Page said that he would rather give his money to Elon Musk. And Elon Musk has SpaceX and a number of other things. He's got Tesla Motors. And Elon Musk is someone who Larry Page sees as a visionary for the future, who's trying to create a better world and trying to just move humanity forward. And also, you know, Musk is trying to do things like create a colony on Mars. And there's a very interesting video here at the bottom of this article where Musk says, like, hey, do we want to be a race that's just on one planet, or a species that's just on one planet, or do we want to be a multi-planetary species where we know that if something happens to one planet, we're still going to survive? And he's like, I think we should be the latter. So I don't know. How do you feel about this, Wendell?
I think that this is, honestly, I think that Bill Gates and Larry Page have a lot in common in their reasoning here, because Bill Gates had, a vast fortune beyond the dreams of avarice, and looked at this and said, there's really not any sort of philanthropic organization that is capable of receiving my enormous wad of cash. And so he's basically built up his own philanthropic organizations to carry out his bidding in the best way possible. And in a way, Larry Page is looking and seeing the same thing, like, just giving away my money is not going to change anything. I need to do dramatic revolutionary things. The place where it maybe falls short a little bit is that Bill Gates is looking at it very pragmatically and being like, there are these vast swaths of population on Earth that don't have clean drinking water, that are exposed to disease, that have no opportunity for education and self-improvement. That's what we should fix first. And Larry Page is more like, well, corporations can be agents of change, and we really need to do really inspired things at the very edge of technology. And so Bill Gates wants to, with his philanthropic stuff, he wants to elevate humanity by bringing up the very lowest end of humanity. And Larry Page wants to bring up humanity by sending the farthest edges of humanity even farther, faster.
Well, why can't Google do things like this? I mean, Google has more money than just about anybody out there, not Apple, but they have a lot of money. Why wouldn't he just give his money back to Google instead of giving his money to Elon Musk, who has several different companies that are not Google and don't have really anything directly to do with Google? Why wouldn't he just reinvest the money internally, and then maybe even invest that money with a clause that says that this money can only be used for a colony on Mars, or this money can only be used to cure AIDS, or something like that? You know what I mean? Why can't he just give the money back to Google? That's what I don't understand. I mean, he does mention that in there, and he says that there are a lot of really wealthy people that are at Google that Google actually made wealthy, and he's encouraging them to find a corporation that's bettering humanity and give to them. But I mean, Google's doing a lot, but if he really feels this way, why can't they start working on some different things? I mean, like building a train that goes from, California to China in 2 hours or something like that. I don't know.
Well, Google, with their products, especially some of their beta products and some of the other stuff that they've canceled, they've tried to do that from a software perspective, but they haven't done well with it. I mean, think about all the cool Google products that have come out that they've basically canceled because it didn't have enough traction, or it didn't have enough internal developer support, or it was a black hole of internal developer support time with very little reward. So they've got to sort of make those calls. Elon Musk's company and organization is more tailored and built for doing the space stuff and doing the advanced research. And I mean, look at Tesla and all this other cool stuff that he's working on. So Elon Musk is at an advantage that Google doesn't have. Google could buy them. I mean, that is an option. Google's been buying high-tech companies.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing about Elon Musk, because he is a visionary, that I don't know if there's another Elon Musk anywhere. So maybe that's really what it is. Maybe he sees Elon Musk as the person who's best to do these things, and he's the visionary who's best to trust with his fortune. So maybe that's what it is. I don't know. But let's go ahead and... this is kind of funny. Multimeters. You can go ahead with this one, because this is a funny article about the color orange.
Well, it's not the color yellow.
The color yellowish orange. This looks kind of orange to me. I don't know. All right, so go ahead.
Yeah, this is really just okay. So this is an Ars Technica article. SparkFun, which is like an electronics hobby company, it's like Adafruit or any other company. They sell multimeters on their website. Now, multimeter is a very basic rudimentary instrument that lets you do very basic electronic circuit and signal checks. You can check voltage, current, resistance, continuity, basic features like that. Well, SparkFun imports these things from China, and they imported about 2,000, and U.S. Customs stopped it. And the reason that U.S. Customs stopped it is because it had a yellow border. And apparently there's a company called Fluke, which is a popular networking company, a popular company that makes high-end tools for all sorts of electronic inspection, including multimeters and some other stuff. And they apparently have a trademark on the color yellow, and it's not even the same shade of yellow. It's like
four multimeters.
Yeah, well, four multimeters, yeah, and so or any not just multimeters, but other tools like multimeters, because I mean they've got network diagnostic equipment and other stuff like that, and it's like if it's got a yellow border, it's not welcome. But the crazy thing in the trademark is it doesn't even specify the exact shade of yellow. Like UPS brown is a very exact shade of yellow. Tiffany blue is a very exact shade of blue. And this is really more of an orange than the Fluke yellow anyway. Yeah. But Customs was like, we can destroy them or you can send them back to China. But it's pretty much impossible to send back to China because if you send back to China, you have to pay an import tariff that's more than the devices themselves. So it's like, what do we do? And so it's like a $30,000 loss for Spark Fund because they've got a yellow border on there. But it doesn't, it's otherwise... And like, how did this happen? This is complete insanity. This intellectual property nonsense is completely insane.
Well, Fluke, in their credit, they did come out and say, "Listen, we realize that a lot of their stuff got stolen. So what we're going to do is we're going to send them a ton of products, our products, our Fluke products, and then they can sell our Fluke products on their website instead of their own products." So. What? That's how they're making up for it. They're like, oh, well, your products can't be sold, but we'll send you ours, and then you can sell our products instead. And that's our. But we're still going to maintain that we are definitely going to look after our yellow color. Yeah, exactly. They reiterated that at the end. They said, listen, but we're not letting up here. Anybody else tries to do anything with yellow that has anything to do with this kind of nerdy stuff? It's not happening.
The Spark Fund did ask for a temporary 60-day license to use the color yellow so that they could get this one $30,000 shipment of equipment. I mean, this is basically, Spark Fund's really not that big. They're basically a hobby company. They're not a huge company, so a $30,000 loss for them is a really big deal. Fluke, by comparison, is a much, much larger company, and this is really, really stretching things. But there is sort of a renewed, like the U.S. is sort of going nuts over quote-unquote counterfeit goods or whatever right now, and so this is just some dumb person in the import enforcement office that just has no idea, because it shouldn't be possible under U.S. law to have a broad swath of colors copyrighted like this.
What's happening right now? Razer is looking at this and they're saying like, from now on, no one can have a black rubberized mouse. Except Razer. I mean, it's clearly they could definitely do it. They could it would work based upon the things that happen right now. It would work.
Who's got the monopoly on black keyboards now? No, this is charcoal. No, this is slate.
It's close enough. According to this, it's close enough. All right. How about a robot that writes news articles? A robot wrote the LA Times earthquake news breaking article. So that's it's the only reason this is noteworthy. It's the first major publication that has used a robot for a major story like this, and they said they're going to start using the robot for supplemental stories and stuff to fill in the gaps because people don't have time to write 2 or 3 sentences.
From the time of the earthquake to the time the story was published was 3 minutes.
Damn, that's a pretty fast robot.
Yeah.
I mean, it conveys the message. It gets it's basically the same thing a human would have done at that point. An earthquake of this magnitude hit. This part of town was affected. More details later, or whatever.
I thought the article was one of the most. I mean, it was well written and cogent, and I thought it was interesting that the author of the story about the story went out of their way to say, "Look, this is basically a completely factual story. It's actually a good thing it was written by an algorithm."
Yeah, it's out of the way and done. It's interesting the way that a lot of the news organizations, and I don't really want to get into a big talk about this, but it's interesting the way a lot of the news organizations are creating their news these days. They are, by and large, using stuff like, feeds that come in, and a lot of companies, a lot of major news organizations are using social media as a source when they're doing stories about wars in the Ukraine or Iran and stuff like that. And it's no longer the man on the ground. There are still people on the ground, but a lot of the major publications, you guys would be very surprised to find out that they actually just have someone sitting there reading Twitter all day trying to figure out what's really happening, and then they give you a news story that probably really does not tell a full story of what's actually happening on the ground. But it's expensive to send people out, over there to talk about what's really going on the ground. And I think this robot thing is a step farther in that direction. And robots would probably do a better job at scanning social media than a human would.
Well,
so what's
it's
the next
interesting
step?
because there are a lot of high-frequency trading algorithms that monitor Twitter and social network for stock symbols, and there have been some phishing and spam things that have created a panic around certain stock symbols, but it was a completely it was just a red herring. It was a completely artificial thing, or there would be somebody would make up a story about some other company and then a company that had a confusingly similar stock ticket or whatever, their stock would just start going nuts for no apparent reason, and it's like, oh, it's related to the other story. So the high-frequency trading algorithms monitor all this stuff as well.
Speaking of phishing, some Syrian hacktivists, some pro-Syrian hacktivists breached Microsoft, and they found a bunch of emails that were in plain text. These emails were in plain freaking text. And emails were from Microsoft to the FBI, because the FBI is always requesting data. And Microsoft was complying with their request, but they were also charging them a lot of money. So they actually intercepted some stuff right here. I'm not sure if this is actually factual stuff or not, because I'm not going to come out and say that it is, but it looks like the FBI is giving Microsoft a lot of money for all this information, which is kind of interesting. I'm not sure what the total implications are here, but the takeaway for me is that Microsoft is talking to the FBI and they're not using encryption. It's just plain text. That's pretty ridiculous.
This appears to be connected to law enforcement requests for account information or people in lawful law, not the NSA stuff, but because it's the FBI, it's most likely stuff that involves a warrant and stuff like that. But apparently the correspondence and way that this is dealt with is just plain text, plain old internet email.
Oh, man. Yeah, we can talk about that in the
knows
comments.
all about that stuff. It's like, FBI, you guys are 2 weeks behind. What's going on?
Let's talk about some hardware, shall we?
Hardware, yes.
There's a very interesting op-ed here on Corsair's website. Corsair has a very active and interesting blog. I've recently started reading it. Jeff posted a cool article about Bitcoin about a week or so ago. He built a really awesome Bitcoin machine. Anyway, this article is from Dustin Scalavos, and it's the title here, op-ed. The future will be measured in performance per watt. And he really starts talking about the GTX 750 Ti and the GTX 750, their Maxwell, and their the performance to watt is twice as good as the Kepler, the previous architecture. And these little cards, they normally wouldn't be something that a lot of people talk about because they're not that fast, they're lower cost, but they're so efficient that everyone's buying them and everyone's talking about them. So in this article, he thinks that this is going to be the future, performance per watt. And we've got a couple other articles that really talk about performance per watt as well. Intel has a refresh of some of their stuff coming out, but I don't know. When do you think performance per watt is going to be the future, or do you think performance is still king?
Performance per watt is the most important thing for businesses. It's been the most important thing for Google and their data centers for the better part of 10 years. Inside businesses, performance per watt is king. And that's probably where most of the dollars are that Intel and others are chasing. It's mostly probably not really in consumer electronics. But indirectly, performance per watt comes in two ways. One, laptops, because you get better battery life. So performance per watt is important to the consumer in laptops and portable devices. They don't call it that, but it is that. And then secondly, the performance per watt indirectly means that the thermal properties and the thermal sealing on these individual particular devices, and Corsair talks a little bit about this, is lower, which means that you have more room for higher clocks. Maybe you have more room for overclockability, but the manufacturers have more room to make the electronics more complicated before they start to have a problem with heat. I mean, if you remember the Pentium 4 architecture, NetBurst, they expected that architecture to hit 10 gigahertz, and theoretically it could hit 10 gigahertz if it didn't make the silicon hotter than the surface of the sun. So
that was a measurable scientific thing, yes.
And so one way to take the heat out of the equation is to lower the energy. And so right now we have engineers who are bumping up against, atomic size limits, and they're like, I don't know how we're going to make this thing switch any faster. So one way to make it switch faster is to lower the energy so that you don't have entropy fighting against you because you're not dumping so much energy into such a small area. And it's really the physics of the situation more than anything. For the consumer, performance, raw performance, is really all that matters in desktops and especially gaming. But you can get a better sealing, a better thermal sealing, and some other properties, and probably a lower cost because you don't need a bigger heat sink and all the metal and that kind of stuff. So indirectly, performance per watt is still important. But I think if somebody came out with something and it was like the 300 watt part that was like $20 and the 100 watt part that was like $50, I think that consumers would still buy the more expensive part if it was the more thermally and energetically expensive part, if it meant that they got better performance and they didn't have a portable device, because nobody wants a laptop with a 1 hour battery life anymore.
Well, Broadwell's coming out really soon. I guess I'm not sure how really soon, but it's going to be Intel's next thing. And some of the models, it's going to have the Iris Pro. That's what this article is about. But the interesting thing to me here is not the Iris Pro, because it's going to be fast. They say it's going to be faster than a 650M, like the NVIDIA 650M. But I really don't care about that. What I care about is they're saying that some of the models are going to have a TDP of 4.5 watts. And you can configure them to possibly even draw 3.5 watts. So we're talking about, it's going to be a 14 nanometer part. And just like you were saying, the problem that you get when you have stuff it's just too small. Like it's so close together that the heat is just going to spill over, and you can't. It just doesn't work. I'm not making any sense here because I'm trying to condense and it's just not working. But with a 14 nanometer manufacturing process, if you fill that with a bunch of power, it's just going to get way too hot. So, 4.5 watts. I'm sure that's going to be on the lower powered parts, but even 30 watts would be a hell of a chip.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, I think that when you're down around 4 or 5 watts, Intel's going to enter tablet territory really quickly with that. And I think get it a little bit lower, they'll enter phone territory as well.
Yeah, we're going to talk about some phone parts coming up pretty soon. Where's that article at? I've misplaced an interesting article on ray tracing. Oh, that's right over here. I'll bring that over because ray tracing is interesting. Intel also has a refresh on their I guess pretty much on the current stuff. It's codenamed the Devil's Canyon. Maybe we'll be seeing some of this at PAX. I don't know, Intel, you're going to be there with some of this stuff at PAX. But one of the big problems with Haswell is that you couldn't really overclock it. If you wanted to overclock it, it's going to melt. And a lot of people online said that you could delit it and then replace the thermal paste. And then a lot of people at Intel were like, that is not the problem here. But apparently they've done something to make the problem or to lessen the problem. So now you can actually overclock these parts. They've got several new K parts coming out. The 4790K is going to turbo to 4 gigahertz right out of the box. I'm going to try to take that one to 5 gigahertz. It's very, very rare that we've seen a 4770K hit 5 gigahertz. It barely ever happens. But maybe the 4790K will. So
yeah,
they've been listening to everyone scream, and now they're releasing some overclocking parts for them.
Have we seen a 4770 actually hit 5 gigahertz in the wild? I was under the impression.
Yours hit 4.9, right?
We hit 4.9 on 2 cores.
Yeah, 2 cores, yeah.
So it's like, and that seems like 4.8 really seems like and 4.8 is like a unicorn among unicorns.
All right, I want to talk about ray tracing, Wendell. Ray tracing is really interesting technology. Right now, graphics cards are, when they first came out, they were made to push polygons. And really, since the first days with a 3DFX and then like the old, NVIDIA cards like the Riva TNT and the Riva TNT2 Ultra and all those cards, they were just made to push polygons, very basic lighting and that sort of thing. And a lot of the newer effects that are coming out, a lot of the really awesome particle effects and lighting effects, they're not made to, or those effects, these graphics cards are not made to deal with those effects. So it's kind of like just duct taped onto the graphics card. Okay, yeah, we can do, like depth of field and volumetric lighting. There you go. There it is. But it's really expensive to do. Add that on with some, different shaders, and you're basically screwed. Well, ray tracing could be the future, and PowerVR says that it's the future, and they're working on some ray tracing cards specifically for tablets and mobile devices and that sort of thing. And really, if they can pull off what they're saying they can pull off, It's a totally different. I don't even want to get into what it does, but right now they are using ray tracing for some ultra realistic things, and some effects that you see in movies is done by ray tracing. But these images on the screen, like this one here, done with ray tracing. It basically just makes the card. It designs the card to deal with lighting, and that's the big barrier right here. Is there an easier way to say this?
Yeah. So 3D modeling software, some of the high-end 3D Studio Max and stuff like that, those are rendered with ray tracers, the ones that look photorealistic. And ray tracing literally means tracing the path of photons. And so you have a light, it shines on an object, the photons hit it and scatter. Ray tracing means simulating that. It is simulating the physical world, whereas all of the graphic stuff that we have now is just a hack on top of a hack on top of a hack, a mathematical projection or into a plane. The whole, like the John Carmack and id Software, figuring out how to do that really, really, really quick on next to no computational resources. Everything has been built basically on that approach and that sort of an empire. Ray tracing is a fundamental start over and saying, let's model the physical world in hardware and make the simulation behave like the physical world. So if you want something that's absolutely 100% totally photorealistic, you've got to have ray tracing. And that's what high-end 3D software does. But this is also the same type of rendering approach that, you hear about 800 computers at Weta Digital rendering something for 6 months to produce, 10 minutes of footage or whatever. That's ray tracing.
And the thing is, once we get hardware on the PC that can deal with this, I mean, if this comes out for tablets and stuff, the graphics on a tablet is probably going to rival the graphics that you get on a high-end gaming PC. It's that ridiculous. You can implement this into a console. You can implement this into a new piece of hardware that goes into your machine. And if the focus is on ray tracing instead of pushing polygons, it'll totally change everything. But we're also probably going to need some new development tools, because even everything right now is created. This is like a 20-year. Everything we have right now is like, it's technology that's like 20 years old, and we're just trying to get it better and better each time. This is a totally different way to look at things.
I think what will happen is we'll end up seeing this technology hybridize along with video cards. Like in the beginning, there were physics cards that were separate, and then they merged with video cards. I think we'll end up seeing a situation where there are dedicated stream processors on the video card as we have now, but then there's also a dedicated ray tracing unit, and somebody will figure out a clever way to combine the two of them to get the best of both worlds.
I always thought that lighting made more of a difference in games than in number of polygons. With Skyrim, I run lower res textures than most people out there. I run like 1K and 2K textures, and then I run a ton of lighting mods. It's all in the lighting, guys. So ray tracing looks at it from that angle, but it also really can get perfect smooth corners, rounded edges, and that sort of thing, and beautiful shadows and lighting. That's really what the real world is all about. It's all about how light bounces off things. That's what your eyes see. So let's think about it that way. Let's talk about science. The Germans, they figured out how to print a 3D car. So this company here, a German engineering firm called Genesis, they have a concept here, and you guys can watch the video. It's essentially a shell that they print together just using a standard 3D printer, and it's it's just using some plastic right now. But they said that if we can do this in carbon fiber, and then we can take an aluminum shell and put it around it. But this could change a lot of different things as far as the way cars are built. 3D printed cars.
The most interesting thing is not that it's 3D printed, but it's that the design to make the strongest, lightest shell of a material actually comes from a turtle.
So NASA's going to Europa. I think maybe they should stop by Titan on the way, because they've observed waves on Titan. Now Titan is a moon of Saturn, and it's got a lot of ice, but it kind of resembles Earth in a way. There's mountains and valleys, and there's even rivers. Now the mountains and valleys are made out of ice, just giant ice mountains. Might be fun to climb, but you wouldn't want to do that. It's normally about 180 degrees or negative 180 degrees Celsius on the surface. It could be fun if you have the right gear, I guess.
It also has clouds, and it rains, and there's wind and things like that. But instead of raining water, it rains liquid methane.
And that's what the rivers are made out of, and they've actually observed waves. That's really, really interesting how similar it is. I mean, seasons on a moon of Saturn.
I totally think we should look at Titan, but I'm pretty sure that one guy warned us against landing on Europa. Something about attempt no landings there, something.
Space. What was that from? Space Odyssey.
Space Odyssey, yeah.
Yeah.
Kubrick warned us about that.
I don't think we should listen. I don't know. Who knows what's really there? Oh yeah, you brought this one up. I forgot to read this one. So the devastating solar blast narrowly missed Earth in 2012.
Yes. Okay. So there's a new article.
Now we're just talking about it.
Well, it was like we saw the coronal mass ejection because I remember when this happened, and I was like, "Oh crap, this is going to be bad," and nothing happened, and so it was like, "Oh, that's weird. We would have expected something to happen." And there was a small sect of non-scientifically minded people that were like, "Yeah, modern infrastructure is impervious," but there was a group of scientists that were working to figure it out. And what happened was that coronal mass ejection didn't actually hit Earth; it just barely missed us. So. Yeah. So what
would have happened? Yeah, what would have happened?
Okay. So this happened once in 1859, and in 1859, telegraphs were installed, and there was a kind of electric light bulb, but it was not a perfected electric light bulb. But you could find electric light bulbs. This electromagnetic storm hit Earth so badly that telegraph machines. Now, keep in mind, a telegraph machine is just a coil of wire,
right?
And then a wire. And then at the other end, another coil of wire. And it's not even necessarily a powered type situation. But it's like a lightning storm, but it's a lightning storm. The electromagnetic field was so intense that like the telegraph machines like burst into flames and caught fire. And it was like, hell and damnation on telegraph machines. There were electric plants that were so overloaded that they shut down the generators and physically unplugged them from the grid, and people's light bulbs were still glowing for hours because of the ongoing electromagnetic storm. So if that happened on Earth, in the article, they estimate that would cause about $2.6 trillion of damage. But it literally, with the electric grid and computers and all that other kind of stuff, it literally would send us back to the Stone Age.
That'd be neat.
But you know what? Fiber optics is impervious to this. It's just the electronics at either end we'd have a problem with.
Yeah, and about the next, I'd say we'll have fiber optics in about 40 years at this rate. Not too bad.
The biggest problem would probably be the electrical grid. There'd be transformers exploded. We don't have the manufacturing capacity to ramp up and start producing electrical transformers that fast. I mean, it really would be a disaster. Like everybody would be on like a 6-month vacation at that point.
Hey, but if you've got solar panels, it'll charge your battery in 10 seconds.
Assuming these solar panels didn't set your house on fire.
Yeah, they're just going to catch on fire. That's really what's going to happen. China, they're going broke. I read the article. They're going for broke on thorium nuclear power. And they're building about 25, 28, something like that. They're building a lot of thorium reactors. And there's a problem in China right now. It's a power problem. And it's also a problem of pollution. So they've got two big problems, and they need to take care of them both. And they think that thorium can really help take care of both of these.
We are big fans of thorium.
Yeah, we are big fans. Wendell, the last time we talked about thorium, I got a lot of hate mail. In fact, I got some hate mail. I'm going to challenge you guys. If you guys really think that thorium is so bad, send me an article that is not a coal propaganda article. I got articles that were like, coal's the only way to go. Thorium's terrible. And I was like, this is from a website called ilovecoal.com or something, and it's like, guys, come on. Like, send me a real article from real scientists, and then maybe I'll consider it. But as I see it, thorium is way cleaner. Thorium doesn't allow you to produce weapons. Like, you're not going to, like with plutonium and uranium, you can produce weapons with that. Thorium, you can't produce weapons with it. So China's not going to be making any bombs or anything with this. And it's also way, way, way cleaner than pretty much everything else that's out there other than like geothermal, hydro, and wind. But as far as like the, other forms of nuclear energy, way cleaner. And also, you're not going to be having any meltdowns. If the Fukushima plant was thorium, no meltdowns.
Nope. It's a lot. I mean, the physics of the situation is a lot better overall. Like, just looking at the physics from a purely physics standpoint, it is a much better situation than with nuclear fission. There are three possibilities for three different types of thorium reactors, and one of the types is retrofitting an existing uranium reactor. That one's not as efficient, but the other two options that you've got for thorium, one of them is a factor of 10 reduction in terms of square footage required versus power output. And again, the design is not really weaponizable friendly, and it's not really meltdown friendly either. So this is really where the world needs to go.
I mean, if we're going to stick with nuclear, I mean, you can look at somewhere like Norway, and like 98% of their energy comes from hydro because they're using what nature provided them. And you've got like Iceland, and they use geothermal because that's what nature provided to them. So there's a lot of areas in the world where we could actually use what nature's provided a little better. But in the areas that really don't have access to things like that, thorium is the clear way to go at this point in time until we invent something better, I guess.
My personal view is that for living, that those types of solutions will work really well. But for industrialization, geothermal and solar and wind and hydro, to a lesser extent hydro, are not really that great from an industrialization standpoint. But if you want to power people's homes and their refrigerators and their air conditioners and things like that, yeah, by all means. But for the industrialized world and manufacturing, we need something with some horsepower, and that's nuclear, but preferably thorium.
Yep. Now, you got some tinfoil hat ideas with this, right? Like,
yeah, China's working on this. If you want to put your tinfoil hat on for a second, China is working on this, and they're making progress with it. And if there's something to it, what usually happens is our intelligence community infiltrates the company, figures out what the secrets are, goes to an American equivalent company, leaks the secrets, and then all of a sudden this American company discovers the most amazing thing, and then we're up and running in America. So if you start seeing press releases and all these discoveries and these companies out of nowhere doing stuff with thorium based on leaked Chinese secrets, then we're probably in good shape.
I mean, I don't have any problem with it. I think it's less of a problem than fracking or anything like that.
It's still better for humanity. I mean, America's basically, there's some German company that invented really awesome wind turbines, and basically the American intelligence community did that. They were like, oh, these are really good designs for a German turbine. Let's give them to an American company. And it's like, wait, isn't that industrial espionage on a governmental scale? And they're like, eh.
Well, one of the other big problems that China is solving with this is they are extremely reliant upon foreign sources of fuel. So they're going to be cutting down on that like big time. Maybe America can do the opposite, and instead of actually trying to learn from this, maybe they can send people to sabotage all the operations. That would be kind of interesting as well. But the tinfoil hat off, I'm done.
Well, one last thing on that, and that is that one of the problems with the hydrogen vehicle, or an electric vehicle and things like that, is that to get there you still have to burn fossil fuels, or you still have to have a nuclear power plant or whatever to get the energy. But if you have thorium, or if you have a source of energy and the energy is insanely cheap, then you can start transforming it into other forms of energy. So if China wants to start selling us hydrogen fuel cells or other things like that, and they make their energy cheap enough, then it could actually be so cheap that we can import energy in that type of a form to America. If energy were cheap enough, we could probably produce artificial fossil fuels that are backward compatible with all the stuff that we have that runs on fossil fuels. Although it's probably bad for the environment and solar warming and things like that. If you have enough energy, it doesn't matter how much energy it requires to put into creating that kind of thing.
All right, you ready to talk about some games?
Yes, let's talk about games.
I am getting really excited for a lot of the stuff that's going on in the gaming world right now. PAX is coming up soon. Game Developers Conference is going on right now. Big Al Tech, what's up? He's out there and he's sending us information. He's got some insider information. So I believe next week we'll have Big Al Tech on. He's got some video footage from the floor. He's there. Right now I want to talk about some of the announcements that have come out. So Crytek, they've announced support for AMD's Mantle with the CryEngine. So that's a pretty big deal because, I mean, freaking Crytek, Crysis, and all that stuff. I can already hear a lot of you guys being like, I don't really care, it's Crysis, EA games, big budget AAA titles. No, not just AAA titles. Crytek also announced that they are targeting indies, and they are going to be giving them a CryEngine subscription royalty free. So there's a really awesome trailer down here just showing off all these games. I'm going to turn it down, just put this on the screen. But there's like a ton of really interesting looking games coming out that are indie games that are using the CryEngine, and all these games could potentially, use Mantle. So that's a ton of interesting. Some of these games look better than, actually most of these games to me look more enticing than Crysis 3. Like a hell of a lot more enticing. Beautiful games, Crysis and CryEngine and Mantle. And that also is going to mean true audio support. And that is probably, I'm going to make that a little bit smaller. For me, the lack of true audio is probably the one thing that's kind of making me wish I had an AMD graphics card, just so I could take advantage of True Audio. Like, it really sounded amazing. And I'm going to be playing Thief, probably not on my system. I'm probably going to play it on the editing rig because we've got a 280X in there, and I really want to play with Mantle and True Audio. So,
the thing that I thought was most interesting about this is that at PC Perspective, they speculate that AMD and Microsoft have actually been working together this whole time on DirectX 12. And AMD is, and they sort of speculate, they seem to be implying, if you will, that AMD is saying, we don't care if NVIDIA co-ops this and it's DirectX 12, as long as the API is basically tit for tat compatible, then it's a better world. That's really interesting.
Yeah, that is really interesting, and it would make sense to do that because they have the GPU in both the PS4 and the Xbox Xbone. The Xbone. I just call it the Xbone, the Xbox One. They've got the GPU in both of those, so that would make a hell of a lot of sense. And guess who else has a really interesting deal for indie developers? The Unreal Engine 4 now, it's launched, today, but that'll be yesterday by the time you guys watch this. So the Unreal Engine 4 launched, and they've announced this really interesting thing for indie developers. You can have full access to the engine and the source code for only $20 a month. That's what I pay. Well, that's actually less than what I pay for a subscription to the Adobe Creative Suite. And I could probably do, if I knew how to make a game, I could do a lot more with the Unreal Engine 4. You guys should license this and start making some Unreal games.
This would be amazing. Well, somebody's got to pay for it.
$19 a month. You can handle that.
Well, somebody's got to pay for the $19 a month plus the developer salaries.
Oh, the developer salaries, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll cover the 19. Deal, right? It's a deal. Yeah. So, in other news, SimCity now has an offline mode, and there's a Redditor discovered that it looks like EA has hired someone to just go online and spam Reddit and spam several other forums. This is kind of funny because
the announcement is that SimCity now allows an offline mode. Sorry, EA, I don't like you. I'm not buying your games. Even though I really I spent a large part of my childhood playing SimCity, and it makes me very sad that you have corrupted it. I will not be buying it, ever.
EA makes SimCity playable offline. So much for the proclaimed impossible functionality. Look, those are some of the headlines that were posted. Anyway, he did some sleuth work and found out that they were almost, even the ones that were on different places on the internet were pretty much done by the same people. So, yeah. You guys can look more into that, but it looks like EA was up to no good there. I'll go quickly through some of the rest of this news. If you guys really want an FPS, hardcore FPS game set in like medieval times, you guys should really check out Kingdom Come. It has a lot, to me, it has a lot of things that kind of look like Skyrim, but it is totally low fantasy, or actually almost no fantasy. It's just sword and shield and people and real circumstances, no dragons. It's, pretty gritty, and they modeled pretty much everything after historic locations. It's looking like a hell of a game, and some really interesting combat. The graphics are amazing, but I would recommend you guys check that game out if you are into stuff like that. And also I wanted to mention this, Hyper Light Drifter. If you're someone who fancies games that are somewhat Zelda-esque, but also have a few new features as well, check out Hyper Light Drifter. I backed this on Kickstarter, and the PC Gamer staff were able to play a very early build of this. I'm hoping that maybe I'll see this at PAX. I'm not sure if it's going to be there or not, but that would be really cool. It'd be very, very cool. I don't know, I think the game looks really amazing. It's got this very interesting art style. PC Gamer asked the guy, like, hey, why did you go with this particular art style? And his response was essentially, well, I was going to try to make this extremely beautiful, fully, rendered HD 3D game, and then I was like, it's just one person. I'm an idiot. I can't do this. And then he just decided to limit his color palette and make an 8-bit style game, and it's very interesting, and as far as I'm concerned, very interesting looking. I don't know. I've been dying for a game like that. Oh, I didn't even send you this, Wendell. You've seen Goat Simulator, right?
Yep.
Well, another company is trying to capitalize on all the hype from Goat Simulator, and they are making Bear Simulator. Bear Simulator looks, I mean, Goat Simulator is just, you're a freaking goat and you run around and you kick things and you climb ladders and you jump on trampolines and you break things and you jump through windows. Bear Simulator is not the same. You're actually a bear, you're running through the woods, you're chasing rabbits, you're eating berries, and you're sleeping in a den. I don't know if that sounds like fun or not, but...
Couldn't be any worse than City Bus Simulator.
I don't know. We'll have to wait until it comes out. And then this is just nothing. Yeah. So that's pretty much the end of the episode. It's springtime. It's nice out. I had that nice walk earlier. I'm going to take another walk after we're done here in the dark. Because I'm metal like that, I guess. I don't know.
Can you feel your toes again? Hopefully, go to the hospital rather than have to cut one of your toes off later.
my feet were like purple, but not from the cold. They were purple because of all the bruising. Because what would happen is like, it's been getting a little bit warmer, and then at nighttime it drops down to 0 or -5, and then it gets like up to 45 during the day. So this weird fluctuation. So the ice or the snow kind of melted and it's turning into like this slushy ice stuff. But then last night and today, a few inches of fresh snow landed on top of that. So I'm out there walking and I'm sinking kind of into the ice, and my foot was getting stuck because I was moving forward, and I had to rip my foot out of the ice. So I had all these bruises on top of my feet. So that's what I went through to get this stupid intro. I hope you guys liked it. And I think we should make that the outro. So yeah, thank you guys very much. The new store is coming soon. Lots of fun things are coming soon. And thank the tech support members. Thank you guys a lot. There's just a lot of fun things going on. So yeah, that's the end of the video.
Oh yes, thanks very much to our supporters who have been supporting us in full force. Thanks for subscribing. It is very helpful.
Let me ask you this while I've got you on. Is anything going on with the new website changes very slowly but surely?
Yeah, we've actually, several people have messaged me like, there's weird things going on. Blah, what's happening? And it's like, it's cool. It's fine. I'm deploying things.
We're working on a live website.
And it's like, don't you have a staging environment? Well, yes, we have a staging environment, but applying schema changes real time means that queries are happening and the database server is real busy. So yes, I'm familiar with workflow. It's cool.
Yeah. So anyway, everything's a slow process, but a steady process. And I think a lot of you guys have noticed that we're not the type who just want to get to be the biggest website on the internet. We want to have the best community. So that's really what we're going for. So slow and steady growth is just fine with me as long as it's just fine with you guys.
And you guys,
let me know in the comments.
You guys know that I've also stopped to deal with the trolls occasionally. You know who you are.
We're implementing some interesting tools to help take care of the trolls. So, the trolls that are around now may be invisible soon. If you're a troll, you may be talking to no one. And you'd be like, why is no one responding to my trolling? Why? I don't understand.
Oh, I'm sorry, you've been voted off the island.
Exactly. All right, guys, we will see you the next time you watch a video, I guess.